Why do you support Trump?
I absolutely think he's a great leader. I think he's brilliant. I think he has absolutely good policies that reflect my conservative values. And I just graduated from law school this year.
Okay. What specific values, conservative values, do you have that he lives in accordance with?
I would say freedom of speech, absolutely.
Did you know that
Um,
recently, right, he just said that he wants to put people in prison for a year for burning the American flag, which the Supreme Court has determined is protected by the First Amendment?
yes, I know that case. It's a Texas case law. And I understand that burning the flag is considered symbolic speech. But at the same time, I do think that it is disrespectful. So I can see, there's different standards for constitutional law. It depends on if they're trying to depends on if they're trying to protect a certain legitimate government interest or a compelling government interest. There's rational baseless, all those
I
things.
have a question.
But at the,
Do you think it should be
yeah,
illegal to burn any other country's flag?
any other country's flag
Yeah.
in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my opinion's nuanced on that. Like, I don't want to like say my whole basis for supporting Trump is based on his opinion on flag burning. But I do think that I personally I think that burning anything is not really acceptable in a civilized society.
Really? Like campfires?
Of course, I think that that is acceptable. That's like for a specific purpose, and that's
So
for.
if you burn the American flag in a campfire, right?
I don't think
So
that
like if you're
anybody should
making
be
s'mores,
burning.
if you make s'mores
Well,
out of the
you're
American flag,
prompt. I understand you're pinning me down on one thing about Trump that he said that that's not okay.
well,
I don't think
you
that's
brought up
okay.
free speech.
Okay, but I do value free speech, and I understand that there's
The only one threatening your free speech specifically is Donald Trump, not only within that respect, but also because he called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution, because he thinks that he won the 2020 election with no evidence in the courts to indicate that.
wait. Okay, so that is going into a whole different topic. I think your first question was why I support him, so I'm just gonna stick with that question if it's okay. And I mean, I can we can go into the flag burning, sure, but I think I support freedom of speech. I support secure borders, and I do think that there's not a problem currently with the fact that we are deporting people that came here illegally. I think based on the fact that my own father was born in Cuba and came here legally, and my family is here legally. I think that it should not be a shock that people now are being deported based on the fact that they are here illegally, and that is something that I support. I think as for safety reasons in a nation that we should understand who is here, and we should not have any question marks as to who's here. If a crime is committed, we should at least have an idea of who are the people potentially that committed this crime. Like, where do you stand on that?
Okay. I think that your position is totally incoherent, and I think your position is totally incoherent because you support Donald Trump. And I can go through this. So, you want to,
Oh, wait, can I stop you there really quick?
yeah.
Just based on a logical reasoning analysis, how is it incoherent? How is it incoherent to think that if a crime was committed, we at least want to know the potential people that committed that crime? So if it was a rape or if it was a murder, wouldn't we want to know, okay, at least we know that this country has X amount of citizens in this country and X amount of visitors, but we're aware of who those visitors are, whether they have visas or this or that, and we're aware of who our citizens are based on citizenship. But if we have, thousands or tens of thousands or millions of people, I don't know the amount, I don't. But if we have X amount of people that we don't even know are here, but they are here, and we don't know who they are, we don't know their names, we don't know anything about them, and we're trying to figure out who committed this murder. And now we have to try to decide, was it someone that we're aware of or is it someone that we're not aware of? We have no basis to know they exist here. Don't you think that is a problem? Like if your family member or someone that you care about was raped or murdered or whatever the crime is, wouldn't we want to at least be able to pick from a database or from a list of names? Okay, we know that these people are here and this is who we can investigate to figure out who did this.
Okay. So undocumented immigrants are in the country are going to have documentation if you give them a pathway to citizenship, and they won't have documentation if you don't give them a pathway to citizenship. So there unironically will be no
Do you think
database.
that everybody
Can I
that
please
breaks
wait,
the
hold up. I just let you speak for so long. Can you please be quiet?
okay, fine.
Okay. So, like, unironically, there will be no database if it is the case that, if it is the case that we support your legislation in terms of mass deportation, because people are going to stay undocumented and they're not going to identify themselves. And if they do not identify themselves, well, then it's going to be the case that plenty of undocumented immigrants that would witness crimes wouldn't specifically, right, come up with the fact that they've witnessed these crimes. So you're less likely to also be able to hold people accountable in the country who have committed crimes, right? In comparison to the people who specifically who won't come up and be a witness because then they would be deported. And then in terms of you trying to determine who committed a, I have a
Wait, can
question.
I just pause you? No, can I just pause you really quick? I just want to understand.
So then why
I
should
want
I
you
let
to.
you finish everything you have to say if I am not able to address it?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because I
Continue.
could have cut you off easily.
No, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, if you're going to reference like who committed this crime, right, I would ask you a simple question related to that, right? If it was the case that someone coming to the country who's trying to, legally immigrate here, you're determining whether or not they can legally immigrate to the country. If they were held civilly liable of, would you let them legally immigrate to the country?
I just want to understand. You're asking me a question, right? So I can respond. Okay, so you're saying if they would I want them to be able to legally become a citizen?
If someone trying to legally immigrate to the country was held civilly liable of, would you let them legally enter the country if you had the ability to determine based upon that information whether or not they get legal access?
I would say no, they are not worthy of legal access to becoming a citizen in this country. No.
Do you think there should be harsher qualifications for becoming a citizen of the country or for becoming president of the United States?
I think what you're alluding to is the fact that Donald Trump was found civilly
Without
liable
alluding, can you address what I just said?
without alluding. Do I think that someone who okay, so I think that that question is kind of trying to put me in a pigeonhole, but I think that nobody should be here who is not supposed to be here. That is my stance. If you did not come here the right way, then I don't think that you should be here.
Okay. What was my question?
Your question was if somebody, or is that not allowed on TikTok?
I said if someone was held civilly liable for, you wouldn't let them legally enter the country. So then my next question was, should there be harsher qualifications for who's allowed to legally enter the country and become a citizen or becoming president of the United States?
I think you're trying to ask me if I think that Donald Trump illegally penetrated a woman, and I don't think that is what the information showed.
I'm sorry. What words just came out of my mouth?
I heard you, but I think
Then
you're trying to.
repeat what I just said.
No, I see what you're saying, but
Just
I'm not
repeat it.
gonna.
Just repeat it.
Okay, can you just hear me out? I don't think that anybody who is not legally in this country should be here. That has nothing to do with who should have the qualifications or the background to become a president. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying.
Hey,
I'm saying
I
is,
understand that. And I asked you a very specific question. If you'd like to answer
but I
that
feel like
question,
you are trying to pigeonhole me, and I recognize that.
I'm asking you a very simple question so that it's very clear and I can explain it to you. Should there be harsher qualifications on becoming a US citizen or becoming president of the United States? Would you like me to answer the
No,
question so that I can provide more clarification to like what
no.
I'm
Well,
looking for?
can I say I don't really, to be honest, I don't really care about how hard it is to become an American citizen. I don't care how hard it is. My dad was born in Cuba and he came here when he was 4 years old, legally, with his mother and with his sister. So
Do you hope that do
am
you
the
hope that it was
daughter
hard? Well,
of a
I have a
legal
question.
immigrant.
I have a question. Do you hope that it took longer for him to get to the country legally?
Do I hope that it took him longer?
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm blessed and I'm grateful that he came here legally, but I don't necessarily care how long it took because that's to me that's beside the point.
So to clarify, you wouldn't have cared if it took your dad 5 years to get into the country?
No.
You know that means that you might not exist, right?
Sure. But that's circumstantial. That's circumstantial. I mean, I'm blessed to exist and I'm
Can I
blessed
go
that
back to the can I go back to the question I was asking?
well, no, can I answer your question as
Yeah,
somebody that
yeah.
actually is the daughter of an immigrant?
Go ahead.
Like I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed that he came here legally and that the process went smoothly for him, what, 50 years ago? But I that doesn't mean I support illegal immigration now. And I think now I don't think it should be a shock that people are being deported because they came here illegally. They're not here legally. I mean, that's the part where I'm not understanding like where the confusion is. Like I get it having empathy for somebody and they had their life here and now they're getting kicked out, but you have to understand that if you come here illegally and you're running the risk of being an undocumented immigrant every single day, there is the chance that you get caught and that you get displaced. I mean, that would be the case for if you were an undocumented immigrant in any other country on the earth. Do you disagree with that? That we're not the only country that would handle it like this? We're not just we're not yeah, it would be worse in fact. I mean, do you agree with the fact that this is not an unprecedented inhumane treatment of immigrants?
So it is inhumane, right? Just because other countries have do this process doesn't mean that it's not inhumane. And then can I repeat my question? And then can you please respond to it now? Because I let you like not engage with it for so long. What should have harsher qualifications? Coming to the country legally and becoming a citizen, or being president of the United States?
So can I ask the basis of I heard your question. Can I ask the basis is it because you're basically insinuating that Donald Trump is a
That's not within the question I'm asking. No, but I do believe that.
He's asking you. Just answer what he's asking.
Okay, so my answer is
What is more harsh?
I don't think there is a valid comparison between what the qualifications should be for being a president versus what the qualifications should be for being a United States citizen. I don't even think that is on the same playing field of validity.
Exactly. Like clearly there should be higher levels of qualifications, harsher qualifications for becoming president comparative to just becoming a citizen, correct?
Sure. Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Sure.
Okay.
But I don't agree if you're insinuating that Donald Trump is a racist, then I do not.
I understand. Now I'd like to be able to address this. So, if you wouldn't let someone legally enter the country if they were held civilly liable of a woman, why would you let someone become president of the United States if they were held civilly liable of a woman? If it is the case that you believe there should be harsher qualifications for becoming president of the United States comparative to becoming a citizen of this country through immigration.
I don't think so. I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. But I don't think that letting somebody into the country, I get it. I said, okay, yeah, like there should be harsher qualifications, but I also don't think that letting someone into the country should be totally based on that. And I also don't think that finding somebody civilly liable for sex means that they cannot be a president.
Okay, so then what part of the argument do you dispute? Because it's clearly just demonstrating that if there are harsher qualifications for becoming president comparative to becoming a citizen, then it is going to be the case that if you have a qualification for immigrants, that you wouldn't let them into the country if they were held civilly liable of a woman, that would entail that you at least have that set of qualifications for, becoming president of the United States, as you have harsher qualifications for one compared to the other.
Well, so can I just say, that a civil standard is much less than a criminal standard, right?
Do you accept the criminal case against Donald Trump?
Well, he was not criminally found liable for that.
Yeah, I
He was
know.
not found guilty on a criminal proof beyond a reasonable doubt standard.
It was a preponderance of evidence. But
Yeah, that's the preponderance of evidence
yeah,
standard.
I
for
understand.
civil
I
cases.
understand. But you said that was enough of evidence to believe it when it comes to an immigrant, insofar as that you wouldn't let them legally
No,
enter
see,
the
the thing is,
country. But for
I
some
don't
reason,
want,
that
I don't
standard
want
doesn't apply
anybody
to
here
like
that.
U.S. citizens who are running
No,
for president
okay,
who are
so okay.
orange.
Well, that's where I think that the argument is getting misconstrued, because whether or not an undocumented immigrant, to use the language that you prefer, whether or not they have been found liable for beyond a preponderance of the evidence, or whether or not they have done nothing other than come into the country illegally, I find the problem with, I do not feel this level of compassion that they deserve a place here because they came here illegally. Whether or not they have a criminal background, or whether or not they are the cleanest, squeakiest person on
Okay,
the
so
planet.
we can address this point, and I'd love to address that point if we, could at least get to the point where we can acknowledge that, like, it doesn't make sense for you to say that someone shouldn't be allowed in the country who's held civilly liable of a woman,
I
but
didn't
then
know, but I
someone
never
who is
said
held
that.
civilly liable of a woman should be allowed to be president. Like, that just
No, but
seemingly makes no sense to me.
okay, I see what you're saying, but I never really like stipulated to that.
You
But
did.
okay.
You literally said that
No,
you
I didn't
wouldn't. You
necessarily
said you.
stipulate.
So then to clarify, you would let someone into the country legally immigrating here if they were held civilly liable of a woman.
If they were legally coming here and that's what they were civilly held liable for?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I guess my answer is I'm not sure.
She's not sure. Really?
Is that okay? I mean, I'm
Right,
being
to
honest.
clarify, you're worried about undocumented immigrants in the country who have not committed violent crimes or bad crimes, but you don't know whether or not you'd let someone in the country if they were held civilly liable of literally a woman unanimously amongst a jury of 9 people. You need to get your priorities straight. People who are in the country who have not committed violent crimes or bad crimes, right, shouldn't be kicked out of the country. They're not bad people. The whole reason why
Well,
we
just
have
because someone has been
hold up.
civilly held. Okay.
The whole reason why we have an immigration process in the first place is to ensure the safety and security of the country. You deporting people who have not committed a violent crime or bad crime is not ensuring the safety and security of the country. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for our culture. It's not good for our general values in terms of us in this context. Like, you're literally talking about ICE going into, in the context of LA, into graduations, ceremonies, into schools, into workplaces, and literally stripping people from their families and communities without due process. That is incredibly immoral and disgusting behavior, because he doesn't want to go through the context of the court system, because he thinks he's above the rule of law. You don't think that goes against the core fundamental values that you were taught growing up of, like, rule of law, democracy, the court system? And he undermines every single one of those things and gets a pass by you every single time.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Did you find this behavior morally abhorrent when the prior Democratic administrations were doing the same thing?
So in terms of the deportations, I definitely disagree with a bunch of the deportations that Democrats have engaged in historically, but this is with due process. You understand the
Which
distinction,
one was
right?
with due process?
Under Obama and Biden, that was with due process,
How do you know?
because we have court processes for that they
And
went
you
through.
saw them, and you saw that they went through them.
We have all of it on databases, so you can verify the information by looking at the database.
So can I ask, if they were responsible for deporting millions more of people than Donald Trump currently is, his administration is deporting,
That's only
why is
because
it
Donald Trump's
so?
like 5 months in.
Okay, so why is it such an issue to you when The Democrats
Do
never
you,
had a
do,
problem.
do you know what due process is? Do you
I
understand what
absolutely,
due process
yeah.
is?
I graduated from law school this year. I absolutely
Yeah,
do understand what due
then
process
I'm
is.
confused as someone who graduated from law school doesn't understand that.
I know, I do understand what due process is.
Can I ask you a question? Can
Sure,
you tell me the 5 freedoms protected by the First Amendment?
absolutely. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, and freedom. There's one more. I'm still studying for the bar exam. I'm taking it this next month.
Freedom to assemble. Interesting.
That is.
Donald Trump sending in the National Guard against the will of the governor of California,
Have you
in order to
seen what the
suppress a
people in California are?
in order to suppress a peaceful assembly.
Okay, if you are gonna call that peaceful assembly when they are throwing bricks
Wait, are you
at
really saying that?
cops,
Are you really saying that everyone who's at the protest is throwing bricks at cops?
no, not every person, absolutely not. But some of them are, and
I've
that is attempted murder.
Okay. I have a question. If someone beats a police officer at one of these particular protests, how long should they go to prison for?
If they beat a
Yeah.
police
Yeah, if they
officer
beat a police officer, yeah.
for a very long time.
Like how long?
I mean, whatever the sentencing requirements are
You said a very long time. So then how do you
Okay,
feel
okay.
then here's
Depending
my
on the
question.
laws of the state. Okay, let me answer your
Go ahead.
question, please.
Officer
If
to death,
it's
that's murder.
if they beat the officer to death, obviously murder. If they attempt to kill an officer, that is attempted murder.
I understand. I'm asking if they beat
Assault, there's battery.
if they
I
assault
mean, those are all. I don't.
if they
I'm not from
violently to
California.
clarify, if they
Hold on, can I just answer your question? I'm not from California. I'm not studying the law for California law. But whatever the sentencing suggestions are or requirements are for that particular state, if you are trying to batter someone or kill them,
yeah,
then
we're
that
talking
is the crime that you should be convicted of and sentenced depending on the sentencing requirements of that state.
Okay. So if it's federal jurisdiction, I'm asking you, based upon what you think it should be, how long should someone be in prison if they beat a police officer?
That's not up to me. That's up to the law. I mean, are you
I
asking based on
understand.
my opinion?
I'm asking you based on your opinion. What should the law be?
If they try to what? Beat a police officer.
Yes, if they beat a
Is
police
that your
officer.
question?
Yes, if they beat a police
If they
officer.
do beat a police officer, I mean, I don't create the sentencing laws, but to me, that should be at least 20 years.
Okay, to clarify, 20 years. Okay. So then, how do you feel about the fact that Donald Trump pardoned people who pled guilty and admitted to violently assaulting police officers on January 6th?
How do I feel that he tried to pardon people that
No, not
admitted
tried.
to
He did pardon people who pled guilty and
Okay.
admitted to violently police officers on January 6th. Hell, for a hell of a lot of the people, we have videos of them doing it. Okay? How do you feel that Donald
I
Trump
think-
pardoned them?
Okay. Can I respond? And I'm not the type of person that's going to act like I know everything and I've heard everything because that would be disingenuous. But I have not ever seen a video of any January 6th Capitol officer harmed, let alone brutally harmed, by a January 6th protester. Actually,
Now they're
the only
protesters.
vid-
By the way,
Actually,
by
one
the way, she said protesters when we're referencing people who admitted to violently assaulting police officers. But then when I called the protests in LA peaceful protests, then
So,
she was like
are the
out of her
people-
mind about it. She was out of her mind about it. Can you believe that
Where
that
did
just
you get
happened on the
this-
live? Can you believe that that just happened on the live?
Do you have to make everything so big?
I'm sorry. You feel uncomfortable with the fact that I addressed what
No, I don't
you
feel
said as what it
comfortable.
is.
Have you seen the videos of people in California throwing bricks through the police officers'
Yeah. Oh, hold up.
windows
and
of
by the
their
way,
cars?
I
That
just
is
want
attempted murder. If you think anything of that capacity even
Hey,
happened
hey.
on January 6th, I have a right to think that
listen,
you are
listen.
clinically out of your mind.
I understand
There
you.
are no
hey,
videos
yes,
of
there
any
are.
such There are no such
There are
videos
literally
of anything
videos of police
remotely
officers
as
getting beat.
violent on January 6th.
You're lying. You're
you are-
lying.
Okay,
There's
so please
there's
send me
like
the link.
160 people that were literally pardoned by Donald Trump who violently beat police officers and engaged in
Violently
violence.
beat?
Yes. Yes.
The only victims of January 6th were one police officer who had a heart attack and this one
You're just talking about
woman.
who died. You're talking about who died.
Actually, that woman who died as a protester because she got shot.
You're referencing just people who died, not people who were beat, who had to go to the hospital because they were beat. There was 160 people that violently assaulted police officers on January 6th that were pardoned by Donald Trump. There are videos of this. They admitted to it, right? They were convicted of doing this. And you don't accept any of these things. These are criminal courts that determined the convictions of people with their admission, with them admitting it, and there being video. And you're acting like there wasn't violence on January 6th. I'm giving you explicit examples of Donald Trump intentionally pardoning people who did this.
Okay, so I'm actually not totally aware of what you're talking about. To be honest, I'm being honest. I'm not totally aware. But I don't think that my lack of awareness about the January 6th situation means that I cannot have an opinion on what is currently going on in response to ICE. I think I can still validly have an opinion and disagree with the way that people are demonstrating their resistance or disagreements with ICE currently, despite me not having full-blown knowledge about January 6th. I understand what happened on January 6th, but that doesn't mean that I cannot have a strong opinion about what is currently happening.
Okay. So I'm not saying you have to have knowledge on it, even though you just said you had knowledge on it and then you didn't know at the same time. That was a little bit
No,
confusing,
I do have some knowledge on it. Please don't like completely twist.
I didn't twist
I do have
anything. I was
some
just
knowledge.
repeating back what you were saying to me.
I hear you.
Yeah. So I don't see. I'm confused what your point is with this because, like, genuinely, like, I'm giving you an explicit example where someone admitted to it, was convicted of it, and there is video of them doing it, and you're like, I don't have enough reason to believe it to be true.
No, I never said that.
Do you agree with me then that in those circumstances where that evidence is present, you will then be able to respond to this? Why did Donald Trump pardon people who committed this violence, and why do you support him, given that you're condemning all of the violence specifically relating to the protests we're talking about? Because I condemn any of the violence, but it seems like under your position, you can't say that.
Wait, so you condemn, can you be more clear about what you condemn? Because you just said you condemn any of the violence. Can you be more clear about that?
Yeah, I condemn violence.
In which circumstances? In January 6th, in the LA riots,
Any
in
of them.
both,
Any of
either?
them. Any of them.
So you condemn any political violence?
Yeah, for protesting and stuff like that. Right? Like we're talking about these are planned peaceful protests. Right? I think there actually are conditions on a world stage for like a violent response to like certain like oppression, especially on a global stage. We're talking like specifically planned peaceful protests and then people going to those planned peaceful protests and then doing acts of violence. Does it make sense?
Yes. So just to be clear, so you were saying that you condemn any violence that happened on January 6th, and you also condemn any violence that is currently happening in the Los Angeles and worldwide riots.
like the peaceful protests, right? Because they're peaceful protests and people are going there and they're committing acts of violence at a planned peaceful protest, which is distracting away. Well, I just want to clarify this point, which is distracting away from the main message of the peaceful protest. I think in my eyes.
But you realize that when we just umbrella term refer to them as peaceful protests, and there actually is a good portion of the protest that is not peaceful, you realize that it loses its...
Wait. If you're going to use that standard, then you can't say that January 6th had any level of peaceful protest.
I will say, okay, do you want to hear my true opinion?
Yeah.
I do think that January 6th was not intended to be violent. I think that it got a little bit out of hand. I think that the Capitol Police allowed some of it to occur. I do think they did. I mean, whether or not you want to agree with me, that's okay. I think that they were a little bit, what's the word? I can't think of the word. When you're complicit, there we are. they were a little bit complicit, and they allowed people to go, and then eventually it got a little bit chaotic, it got a little bit dangerous.
Did Trump
Boom.
allow any of the violence?
Did Trump allow it? Trump wasn't there. I would not say he'd allowed it. I mean, that's a whole nother debate. That's a whole nother freedom of speech and whether or not he incited it. No, hold on. Just hear me out real quick. That's a whole nother...
I need to make this point. Trump took hours in order to be able to tweet on Twitter to not engage violently, right? And to like stop people from going there. Because it is the case that like there were hours where he didn't do that and he knew that this was happening. That's a huge issue.
Okay, so I don't want to... So actually, like I told you, I just graduated from law school. That was actually a prominent... Not a prominent, but it was somewhat of a topic that we touched upon in my class that I took called media law. And that was it's a whole topic in and of itself, whether or not he incited, right? Incitement, that's a whole topic on its own. But I will say, January 6th, and then the protests that are currently happening and the protests that were happening in 2020, I would say there's a strong difference in those protests.
Yeah, one of them was predicated off of like bullshit and lies, and the other one's predicated off of people literally being kidnapped from their communities without due process, right?
So do you think that violence is okay?
One of them was literally people thought that their candidate won the election with zero evidence. And the other one was literally us having evidence that ICE agents going in without identification are ripping people out of their communities, right? Without due process, out of graduation ceremonies, out of schools, out of their workplaces, out of just typical public areas. People are being ripped away from their families and away from their communities without due process. That's what people are protesting specifically in the context of LA and the government's response to that, right? Whereas specifically what you're bringing up with January 6th, people were literally just protesting the fact that they thought that their candidate won with no evidence.
Do you think that the basis of... Let me form this properly. Do you think that the reason behind a protest makes certain behavior more justifiable than other behavior? Or do you think that no matter what the reason is behind the protest, that maybe some behavior is absolutely unacceptable?
So there are some things, or no matter what, some behavior is absolutely unacceptable. But yes, some things are more acceptable given the fact that there is, like something greater happening. Would these types of protests make sense if we were protesting specifically like something that doesn't have an impact on people's lives? No, these types of protests wouldn't make sense. The reason why they make sense is because it is the case that we're protesting things that affect people's lives. If these protests were planned specifically for like something that just it doesn't relate to anything that impacts people, right? Then you would agree in that circumstance they would be without purpose.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question. Do you think that depending on the purpose, certain behavior is more acceptable than other behavior?
Yeah.
Because my opinion...
Yeah, let me give you an example.
Can I explain my opinion?
No, because genuinely, if someone is just screaming on the side of the street, right, for something that genuinely is a valid concern, it makes sense. If they're screaming on the side of the street because they can't play Pokemon Go, that doesn't make as much sense. Do you understand the distinction between someone screaming on the side of the street for valid concerns and someone screaming on the side of the street because they can't play Pokemon Go?